Okay, okay.
So I'll introduce you. You all ready?
Yep. Oh, sorry. I need that button.
Okay, I think we're all ready. So, ready for our second presentation. Everybody ready to start? Okay, again, we've got 30 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes or so for questions at the end. I'm going to introduce the three Steves. Steve Ogden, Steve Coppin, and Steve Bailey. And they're from?
The University of Kent. And just so you know, you don't have to be called Steve to work there. It is just per chance. It does help. We have brought Dan with us just to prove that point, but he's not in the room today. We're going to talk to you a little bit about our experience moving from WebCT to Moodle, as Manchester Met did, and take you through a few of the things that we think made our adoption and migration successful. So I'll just introduce us quickly. My name's Steve Coppin, and I'm the Learning Research Development Manager at Kent, and I started off as an e-learning technical developer there, and I built some of the tools that we're going to be talking about today. And do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Do you want me to do it?
You can do it.
Okay, well, we've got Stephen and Steve, and they're both faculty learning technologists for us, and they've been invaluable through the experience. We're going to talk to you about our initial migration from WebCT. What were we on when we left? Was it 6? WebCT 6 to Moodle 1.9. A few things that we did around integrating our other disparate corporate systems, and a little bit about the training and also some developments that we've done on top of Moodle and some that we've contributed back to Moodle as well. And then talk a little bit about the future and our involvement with the upcoming IMS Learning Tools Interoperability Standard, which we're currently undertaking as part of a JISC-funded project. And we're going to finish off by talking about one of the services that we now offer as a result of our experience of moving from WebCT to Moodle. So I'll hand over to Stephen, who's going to do the first bit.
Okay, so just to set a little bit of the background, we'd been using WebCT for about 3 years, well, WebCT 6 for about 3 years, and then Blackboard bought it. So straight away on the cards, we were going to have to switch VLE. So we started a VLE review process. And just to cut that story short, we chose Moodle. And we chose it for several reasons, but one of those reasons was that it would put us in control. We could host it ourselves, we could develop and integrate it ourselves, and we wouldn't have to worry about it sort of being pulled out from underneath us. So at the time we had, and we still have, a 6-year data retention policy. So we keep material in VLE modules for students to access for 6 years. So part of our switch over to Moodle meant that the migration of that data was absolutely vital for us. We didn't want to keep WebCT around and continue paying license fees just to have it sit there as an archive. So we were in a situation where we had our WebCT application and our database. And then we set our Moodle up. And we needed to get the data from one to the other. So we wrote our own migration tool. And we had to pick and choose what we were willing to invest the time into actually migrating out of it. So there are various things that we didn't migrate out, but we migrated all the things we really wanted. So this was courses, files, the category structure, the questions and quizzes, assignments, and forums. And it's not just forums, but all the forum posts, and if any forum posts have attachments, then they came over as well. And it all got translated into the Moodle equivalents. And I note that when we say we migrated assignments, the built-in WebCT assignments, they got migrated. We also used Turnitin at the University of Kent, and we couldn't migrate the Turnitin assignments from one to another. They actually sort of, even though you see them in the VLE, they actually sit on a website somewhere. So we communicated with Turnitin, and they migrated for us the access to all of our WebCT Turnitin assignments from the WebCT interface to the web interface. So they persisted as an archive that we could access. But migrating is a very difficult task, we found. And while we had a really good migrating tool, we found that once we did our initial migration, there were a few things that needed tweaking. And one of the best things I think about the migrator is that it can be run again and again, and it will top up the migration every time. So we started off by running just all of our archive modules from previous years and migrated those across. And then we did a second migration of all the current year's content. And then just before WebCT got switched off, we did a final migration. And every time we ran this, the migration tool actually looked at what had changed. So it didn't start the whole process from scratch again. And as every time we did a migration, we got our academics to have a look at their Moodle modules, compare them to their WebCT ones, and help us work out what had worked and what hadn't. Fixes were then scripted into the migrator, and every time we reran the migration, those fixes would retroactively fix anything that hadn't worked the first time. So by the end of the process, we had, I'd say, an almost perfect replica, except it was in Moodle, so it was probably slightly better than a replica. And then our WebCT instance vanished, and our database remains accessible in case we ever needed to do further migrations of any further fixes that came up. So then, one of the next important tasks was actually integrating it into our existing environment, because if it just sits there on its own, then it's a lot of work. So we have a student information system which contains a lot of information about the students and what courses they study. And that pulls through via an application we call Connect, and it creates a structure in Moodle of all the faculties and departments and then the modules, and it pulls through the students and enrolls them on the respective modules. And then, so that we're not communicating, just switch back and forth quickly, Connect could talk directly to Moodle, but to actually protect Moodle from the constant update from the student information system, there's an intermediary database, and we call it peer. And this actually protects Moodle from being hammered by constant updates, and also it buffers all the data. So the Connect tool can just sit there, talking to the information system, be aware of all the updates that are needed, and then push them into Moodle as and when, nice quick updates, and it also has in there extra logic so we can do extra things. One of the things we found a lot of academics wanted was, rather than just having Moodle modules just relating to the modules they taught, they would want to get an entire cohort of a particular faculty or a particular program and have a Moodle module just for them. And with the extra logic in peer, we can actually do that. We can grab a bundle of courses and create them as a single Moodle module. Another important thing to integrate in was a timetabling system. It's all well and good having just the students on the module, but we need the teachers as well. So the teachers and the conveners come across from our timetabling system. And we also have a module catalogue. This pushes information out to the websites that says what our modules are about, lots of synopses of them. And we actually pull through the descriptions into the Moodle module description field so that people can actually see what their module is about, click through to find further information about it.
Right. So moving on, I'm going to talk a little bit about training. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's not hugely impressive, but it is an important thing when you're moving from one system to another. And so what we started off doing was to design an initial training session, and specifically, rather than showing people all the bells and whistles that Moodle provides, actually saying, okay, this is what you previously did in WebCT, and this is how you therefore do it in Moodle instead. Once we got that training sorted out and tested, we then took it to individual departments and tried to get not necessarily all of the academics from a particular department together, because that's pretty much impossible, but as many as possible into departmental training where we could, in some cases, tailor it slightly to exactly what they wanted. So we ran a few of those, but we didn't find that we could actually run them in every department. And so we then offered a summer training program, which had capacity for 160 members of staff over 2 months, was it? Yeah. The downside to a summer training program is that academics do like to disappear during the summer. They must migrate somewhere. And so we didn't have a massive take-up of that. And so we found that later on we had to do a last-minute mop-up, which we'll see there in September, which was actually pretty much the 2 weeks before the start of term. We had capacity for 300 members of staff. And as I was away on paternity leave, my colleague Stephen was the only person running these sessions. So he probably had a voice that sounded a little bit like mine does right now. We also provided student training documentation, which was very important, especially from the point of view of how a module previously looked in WebCT and then how it was represented in Moodle, because obviously in WebCT you've got a folder-based structure. In Moodle it's a very sort of flat topic-based structure, which personally I prefer, but it's an important thing to show people what that means. And as well as that, because our WebCT license expired was it July? Yeah, in July. We found that that wasn't particularly helpful to the any students who were resitting modules because they still had to have access to the material they were looking at before. So they really, really needed to see the things that were in the archive. And so we had a dedicated email-based support service. But it's a testament to how easy Moodle is to use that we had, I think, one inquiry over the entire of the summer. So that was quite pleasing. Okay, and the lesson that we learned from that really was that we need to find out exactly when people are available and try and find times that are suitable for everybody involved. Because we wanted to train in advance, and the academics wanted to train as and when they wanted to use Moodle. Okay, I'm going to actually show you a few of the developments that we've done now. I'm going to do this live, so I'm hoping that everything is going to work. Okay, so here's our version of Moodle. This is an example of a module that's been created from information in our student data system, and so we automatically pull through the module code, which is obviously the very important thing that thankfully we didn't have to implement ourselves, and the title, and that's automatically populated in the top section there. But a blank module obviously has no content at all. And the way that we do things at Kent is that rather than reusing a module every year a brand new module is created with no content, and it's up to the academic to decide whether or not they want to take last year's content, or in fact content from any other module that they've taught in, and pull that into this new module. And so for that, Steve and his team developed the module content rollover block, which automatically appears on the right-hand side of every newly created module. Now what it does is it will look for what the individual person looking at the module at that moment in time has teacher access to previously, and it will automatically filter it for the module code that we're looking at right now. Now this module unfortunately hasn't existed before, but hopefully if I use the example of 534, hopefully that was a good example. Yep, there we go. We've got two instances there. And so I can choose the 2010-11 if I wanted to, or obviously the previous year. By default, it'll copy pretty much everything and in a way that we consider to be most suitable to everybody. But there are several different options there, so you can, for instance, decide only to pull through, for instance, your quizzes or your quiz questions. And there are various different configuration options that you can choose whether or not to select.
One I'd just like to highlight is the clean file store. We found with WebCT a lot of people using it as kind of a repository. They had a lot of files in there they were carrying over year after year but not using. What that option does, it goes through and makes a list of everything that's been referenced. Then if it hasn't been referenced in the course, it gets rid of it. It's still there in last year's module, but it's not there in the current.
Yeah, so essentially if there's something that exists in the file store but it's not linked to from the main Moodle page itself, then it gets cleared out, and that's a default option, although it can obviously be switched off by the academic. So when they're happy with everything, and normally bear in mind that this will be a module that has existed before that they did have teacher access to, and they're happy with the default, so they simply have to click the schedule button and nothing else. But there are further options. We click schedule, pass the stupid test, yes I am a human, there we go. And then it's telling us that rollover is pending and that essentially it will happen by the end of play tomorrow, although this is actually running every 5 minutes now. And so in 5 minutes time that will copy across. And because this is our live version of Moodle, I'm going to cancel that. When that does get, when the rollover does actually happen, the person who requested it will receive an email telling them all about what they requested and that it's happened. So even if they then go away and come back to it, it's they're getting the information that they need.
Sorry, Steve, that request is sent to a Java application underneath the there. We were going to use PHP, but because it's a very intensive process and it's going to happen a lot at the start of the academic year, we needed to use something more heavyweight, so it's actually a Java application that's supporting that.
Okay, thank you for the science bit. Can we do it afterwards, because I've just got to run through this. Okay, so the next thing we did was the simple file upload tool. One of the main bits of feedback during the pilot of Moodle was that academics found that uploading a file wasn't as straightforward as it was in WebCT. Partially due to WebCT using the Java runtime environment for that. But we instead developed our own simple file upload tool. And so I believe that when you're uploading a file to Moodle from this page, it takes around about 11 clicks, I think we counted previously. But with the simple file upload tool, please ignore the annoying terms and conditions that our library have imposed on us. Yes. Yes, I agree. Yes, I love our library. Okay, so I'm just going to upload our presentation here, and you'll see it takes, just like it did in WebCT, it takes the file name from the file that you're uploading and automatically adds it as the name. And all we have to do is click Save File to Module, and it's going to upload the file and create that link in this particular section here. And so it's now telling us this file is already in there, and we can then go and add more and more and more if we wanted to in this particular section. Just to add, the default that we've set on this is that it's got forced download set on it, because we do find that some people find, in particular, PowerPoint presentations a little bit tricky if forced download hasn't been set, and so we found it the easiest thing just to enable that by default. But if we wanted to, we could tailor it to say, okay, well, forced download for PowerPoints, allow PDFs to display in screen, etc. But that's the default that we chose.
If you go into edit module, then you get the same menu you would have got.
Exactly, yes. So you can go in and change those settings if you want to. And then finally, I just want to show you our CLA tool. This is something, again, that our developers created for us. And essentially what it does is it takes all of the hard work away from the academic when it comes to requesting CLA scanned material. And so if I go here, request CLA book extract, I'm not actually going to fill this in because it's simply a form. Again, you're asked to provide a name, and then the details of the book, so the title, the author, the publication date, and then the extract information. You can also add a note to the librarians there, so if you want to, you can beg and plead for it to be done as soon as possible. And also, as you can see there's some very helpful information to say just how much people are actually allowed to scan, and so that should hopefully avoid people trying to request too much material. When that's saved, it automatically gets added to the module as a placeholder, and so it looks like a little locked PDF icon, just to show people that it's there's copyright approved. And that's a placeholder which simply just sits there. And in the back end, if I can just quickly go to, have I got time to show the back end? Yeah. Okay, cool. So from the librarian's point of view, they actually get an email at the end of each day telling them about all the different requests that have been made. But they do also have their own reporting area in the Moodle administration pages. Where's that gone now? Reports, CLA administration. And if I go for pending file upload to show you an example here, here's one that somebody's requested very recently, and so they can actually go on to see the full details of it. In some cases, they may have to add some extra information if the academic hasn't put all of this stuff in here. As you can see here, this one is not available, which is why they haven't uploaded it. And so you can see here that they're actually giving them this information back, even if they can't do it. But if the book is in the library, they then scan it, they put the cover page on there, they actually browse, select the file, and upload it. And as soon as that happens, that immediately replaces the placeholder that's in the Moodle module itself. And at any stage of the process, when something happens with this, the academic is sent an email with the information about what's happening. So they're always kept in the loop. And so really, aside from requesting the book chapter, which is what the academic would have to do even if we weren't using anything electronic, that's all they have to do. It's just a matter of sit back and wait. Of course, the question then is how long do they have to wait, and that's all really down to the human resources that are available in terms of scanning. And that also obviously depends on the institution. I think that pretty much covers it for the few developments that we've got on there. So I'll just head back to there. There we go.
And just a couple of things on the CLA tool. We had two major challenges. The first one, oops, before I go, oh, now I've really buggered it up. The first one was to recreate a process that the library were already doing. We wanted to deliver this tool for them, but we didn't want to change the way that they were doing things. So you might send the print form button, that would have printed out the form that they would have had completed anyway. So little touches like that allowed us to push through this tool. And the other thing was to try and make it easier for the academic to do it this way rather than to cheat and upload the PDF themselves. And that was always a challenge through the process. And I think we've got as close as we can get. So if they
the audit trail as well.
Oh, and also, yeah, we have an audit trail, so they can generate their reports really easily. They know exactly where the resource is being used. If we copy them as part of the CLA tool, they also get a notification to say that it's been moved as well. So it's really good for them keeping track of things. So, and there are a few of the developments we've done in the past. Here's one that we're doing at the moment, really. We're just coming up to the end of a JISC-funded project called Enabling Integrated Learning Environments, EILE, and that's to look into the IMS LTI standard. Has anyone heard of basic LTI? Okay, that's a precursor to a larger standard which is going to be released hopefully this summer, although that's what they were saying last summer. Yeah, we'll see when it comes out. But we've been helping them really to create one of the first implementations of that specification, and Moodle is actually currently the only one that has a publicly available for LTI consumer plugin. So it's actually ahead of the game. And this is a problem that we're trying to solve. With custom integrations, what we often find is that they're quite high risk. Moodle doesn't have a sandbox environment, so when we had a student final year project to come and say, we want to integrate with you, here's a few thousand lines of code, just drop those in your Moodle. We got understandably nervous because then once it's in Moodle, it can access anything. So we didn't have time to do a security audit, and we had to say no to a good tool. They're also quite expensive. Custom integrations are difficult to provide. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into understanding both sides of the system and then building the integration. They're difficult to deploy. Again, you might have that big security audit that we'd all like to avoid. And then they're difficult to maintain. Both the service and Moodle are quite likely to change. And if that's happening all the time, then you actually end up spending a lot of time maintaining all of these custom integrations. Now, from the provider side, this gets a lot more complicated when you bring in the other leading VLEs, which I won't mention their names out loud. When you have those two back in the mix, you start to see the spaghetti of integration, and it's this spaghetti of integration that JISC have recognized, and they want ways to try and fix this. So the way that the LTI standard does this is it sticks a specification in the middle, and it's a set of documents. I can't remember the amount of documents it's up to, but it is quite vast, which describe the way that a service provider, which are our services there, and our consumers, which are the VLEs, can exchange information based on integrations. And you'll notice that the arrow pointing towards Moodle has been changed to orange, or some kind of greeny grey colour, and that's on purpose because that side of the integration is most likely to be done by the VLE owner, so Blackboard or Sakai, or the community that support the tool, and that's exactly what we've done for Moodle. So we end up with this sandbox environment because the list of functionality that is defined in the specification can be enabled and disabled per integration. So if we don't want the tool on the other side to know our email address or something like that, we can withhold that information. It's cheaper to produce because you've literally halved the development cycle there because you don't have to worry about the Moodle bit. All you need to worry about is becoming LTI compliant. It's simple to deploy. You can literally discover a tool and within 10 minutes deploy it within your Moodle environment as a full service, which is quite impressive when you see it. I'll show you a video in a minute. And the other thing is, as I mentioned before, Moodle and the service themselves are quite likely to change, but the specification itself has been very, it's been crafted to make sure that it shouldn't have to change that much in the future, so it's a lot less likely to change. So if you become compliant to the specification, then you should only have to maintain that integration. I'm going to show you a small excerpt of a video. It's a longer video on YouTube, which I'd prefer you...
The LTI standard sits between the tool consumer, usually a VLE.
I'd prefer you watch after, because the rest of it's quite embarrassing for me. But this is a quick demo just to show the tool in action. I wasn't brave enough to do a live demo, I'm afraid. But I think this does it a lot quicker. And also straight after that, there's a testimonial from Nick Hiley, who's the head of the British Cartoon Archive, talking about the LTI integration we're doing for them.
I'm a tool provider, usually a rich content learning provider. We have built the first full LTI compliant Moodle consumer in addition to a collection of providers to demonstrate the tool registration, launch, menu and resource linking functionality of the full LTI specification. When presented with a tool that you would like to integrate with, such as our resource-linked media streaming server solution, all you need to do is take the deployment URL and enter it into the Add LTI tool form. In this case, I've been presented with a secret that I need to enter on the provider side. Once the secret has been verified, I am sent back to the Moodle consumer. During this process, both the consumer and the provider will cross-reference their offerings to ensure that the capabilities and services they need to integrate with are available. Having enabled the provider, we can then use the tool from our course pages. When I add the resource, you'll notice that the form I am presented with is actually hosted by the provider, but appears seamlessly within the consumer. I can upload my file to the media streaming server and return to my course page, where the choices I've made are automatically reflected. Although we are using the interface presented to us by the provider, the user is unaware that they have left the learning environment. Another way to integrate is menu linking. For our WordPress integration, we have a menu link in a Moodle block injected by the provider. When the tool is launched for the first time, WordPress uses the information sent across with the request to build the block, my user account, and associate the permissions based on my role in Moodle. This standard-based integration provides us with the controlled sharing of information in a sandbox-style environment, and with the speed to market and deployment of new tools significantly shortened, we are confident the cost of integration will be reduced.
At the British Cartoon Archive, we have the National Collection of British cartoons of political and social comment, and we have a commitment to make those as widely available as possible. And the advantage to us of working with the EILE project to LTI enable the archive is that we can make our digital images widely available but still keep track of how they're used and where they're being used. And that allows us to do two very important things to us. One of them is to keep track of material for copyright reasons, because copyright is owned by newspapers and cartoonists and they like us to monitor it carefully. But also it enables us to distribute material with our own branding so that the material, we don't lose track of it and users know where it's come from. So this to us gives us the twin advantages of being able to distribute material widely but still keep a track of how it's used and where it's going.
Stop it there and get rid of that. Oh god, it's loading again.
The RTI Standard sits between.
Sorry about that. So there are lots of topics covered there that I don't have time to talk about today, but things like ownership are very important as well for content providers. They want to make sure they can wrap their own brand around it, which is what Nick was talking about there. If you're interested, then there's a lot more on the blog. One thing I left out of this slide is that when you bring in the other VLEs, you'll notice that it's a lot easier to maintain, and it looks easier, and it is easier. The service provider only has to maintain a single integration. They only need to be integrating with the standard. And that way they can ensure that they'll then be able to integrate with any of the leading VLEs that support the standard, and it's on all of their roadmaps to do so. So moving on, we're also starting to offer a service, and it's based around the migration service that we created during our own migration. Last year we also moved the University of Strathclyde from WebCT to Moodle, and this year we work with Manchester Met. Thank you for the plug earlier on. And we basically offer a service doing the same thing as we did for ourselves, so that we do a small introduction followed by a trial run and evaluation. So we'll move around about 25 modules. We ask for kind of a good representation of your course, so big modules, small modules, ones that use quizzes a lot. And we give you an idea of how your WebCT instance is going to look in Moodle. If you're happy with that, we go ahead and do a full run on all of the data, and again there's another evaluation phase there, and then at the end we have the purchase. And it's all based on the data, so basically you buy the data off us and then host it wherever you want. And I've been chatting to James from ULCC about sending the data over there and getting it hosted on ULCC as well. I think that's all we had to cover, so we've got, if you want to get hold of the faculty learning technologists, you can contact them on eLearning at Kent. My email address is s.coppin@kent. And also there's a blog there for the EILE project, which was the full LTI stuff, and there's a lot more information on there about the project. So I think that's it. Are we good for time? Okay.
Okay, I'd like to thank Steve, and Steve for doing this presentation. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen flowcharts like that so well presented since 30, 40 years ago when I used to be a programmer myself. Right, questions? The question was, what is the size of the support team for your VLE, and did you employ anybody extra to move from WebCT to Moodle?
Good question. We've always had 3 faculty learning technologists at any one point. That's right, isn't it? And a university learning technologist who also helps us out. So they're kind of from the liaison side, but also helping us with recommendations on the technical aspects. And we start off with 1 full-time e-learning developer, and then we upped that to about a year through the process, didn't we, just to have a bit more of a run at it. And now we're actually starting to back away from the development effort, and I'd say right now we have a full FTE, but it's not one person sitting down doing it. It's covered by a wider team. A team of 3 people, but we have a lot of other responsibilities as well. It's an interesting discussion, actually. I think what you're getting at is hosted versus using it internally. And we use it internally, but I think it is important that you have the resource. If you haven't made the jump already, you do need that technical resource to embed it in your infrastructure. I think what Ulcc and others are doing with a hosted service is really interesting. And I think also one of the reasons why we decided to go internally was because, one, we have the infrastructure, but two, we wanted the control. We wanted to build these things that we've built and have full access to the system. But I think the full LTI thing really throws it open again, because if you want a customizable environment there, when the full LTI plugin is released, and if you Ulcc go with it, then it would give you the ability as an administrator to go off and integrate with whatever you want, because the VLE is protected. So I think that kind of makes the conversation a whole lot different when that does arrive.
Okay, any more questions?
You know the content rollover you have for year to year. Does that mean that every year the teachers or the lecturers, they can't use the same content? They have to sort of delete it and then put it on the next year? Is that what?
That process does happen. We don't delete the old content, it's still there. That's why we make a copy, that's why we built the rollover tool. We have a duty to protect the old content for 6 years, as these guys mentioned, so we try to make it, again, as easy as possible to get them to leave that content, take everything that they want over, and then reorganize it for the new year.
About the content migration transfer from the WebCT. I'm not familiar with WebCT, but I'm sure it's different from Moodle. Do you have any reflections about transferring the entire, if a course has dozens or almost 100 of files and descriptions and pages, what do you do with them in Moodle? Do you just pour them into Moodle, or do you sort them out? Because if you sort them, then you're kind of making things that unchangeable. And if you're pouring it, then it's too much for maybe the teacher to sort them out.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point of view, and actually when we were at the Plymouth e-learning conference just a couple of weeks ago, we found that quite a number of people are taking a move from one VLE to another as the opportunity to say, okay, let's cut our losses and let's start all over again. And so yeah, the way that we mapped things was to essentially take any top-level folder in a WebCT course then becomes a topic within Moodle, and folders beneath that become labels with the content indented. And so yes, if it's a large module, and I mean one of the ones in the pilot was huge, and it does end up looking like a complete mess. One of the problems that we then faced was that although the way that we migrate content from WebCT to Moodle was the best way of representing that previous content, it's not necessarily the best way of laying out a Moodle module. And so we've had to kind of go back and retrain people on the good module design. And so yeah, it's definitely an issue. And although Moodle has the tools to be able to put lots of content in there, but it's just not easy to remap it in that way.
Yes. The question was, with regard to the LTI project, are you making that part of the GISC project?
Yeah, it's already available. I don't have the URL, but if you'd like it, I'll give it to you afterwards. But what we've done so far is available. Now, we've only done some of the specification. We've done the registration launch and, the tool registration launch, and also the kind of sending a context across, so you can do kind of context linked things. That's all available, and we are working with the British Cartoon Archive to do some more LTI stuff. So as we do that, we'll improve the consumer and make sure that we carry on contributing that back. But it's up on a Google Code repository, and I think it's code.google.com/p/EILE. Okay.
We've got time for another couple of questions. Anybody else? The question is, does the rollover tool work only on Moodle when you've got all the same instance in Moodle?
Yes.
And how do you see it working in 5 years' time?
We'll change the tool. It's a flexible tool. We've built it that way. So yeah, if we do go to kind of satellite Moodles, then we can change the rollover tool. We do have something similar actually. We've got a content publisher, which actually uses a lot of the same code that moves things from one instance to another. Because at Kent we have an external Moodle instance that's public facing that we've been working on. And it's basically the same concept. It moves courses from one instance to the other, but it is a separate tool.
Okay, last question, please. Question is, how would you expect the use of Moodle 2 to change from 1.9?
That's an interesting question because we do plan to move into Moodle 2 next September. I don't want whispering into the microphone. I think next, so not this next academic year, but the one after. And we do have a job on now to change all our tools to make them Moodle 2 compliant. For example, the change in file storage is going to have a lot of implications on the tools that we've already written. But you know, that's something where we hope that full LTI and things like that can help us out, because if Moodle 1.9 is full LTI compliant and Moodle 2 is full LTI compliant, then we wouldn't have that problem going forward. So we're starting to recognize the value in standards-based things, so long as it's on Moodle's roadmap to support them.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Again, I'd like to thank the 4 Steves. And it's lunch coming up now, so you can obviously grab these guys over lunch and have a further chat with them. I finished early because I know I like to get to the queue first. So with a bit of luck, you'll all get there first. Thank you.